Hey, it is Tiki Technical Tuesday, and we're going to do something completely different. We're glazing like mad on the volcanic vapor mugs, and you have seen the process enough. So we're going to completely switch gears and work on something inspired by this. This is a watering bowl that we put out for the animals during the wildfires, and the squirrels have been loving it. So we thought, with the studio over there, that we should expand upon this idea and perhaps put out a permanent fountain for all of the little wildlife critters that we have here at the studio. And since we are a ceramic studio, we thought we should make it out of clay. So the project begins with this in-ground fountain that I got. I have to dig a big hole, and all of the mechanics and nitty-gritty of the fountain will be hidden below rocks. It should be nice and really pretty to look at. But first I got to dig the hole. Okay, moment of truth. Oh. Oh. Ah. Oh. So the dirt all around the studio is actually clay, which sounds poetic, but oh my god, it is so hard to dig. Okay, I'm going to call that done for the day and go back and do some more glazing in the studio. And when I can regain feeling in my arms, I will lift this back out and put some gravel on the bottom, get it good and level, and then we're ready to tackle the clay. So I have this handy dandy measuring stick that I use so that I never make something too big to fit into the kiln. It's marked off with the bottom edge of the kiln, and I have spacers to show the maximum height I could make things for if I do like 3 stacks inside of the kiln. So taking that stick to the backyard, we can decide how tall we can safely make our fountain. Perhaps the most dangerous part of this whole thing is I have to do some math. I know the clay is going to shrink 11%, so I need to figure out just what I'm going to end up with. Okay, so now that we know how big it's going to be, it's time to actually start making the fountain. I'm going to give a shout out to the Great Pottery Throwdown for inspiring this entire project. It's on HBO Max now. Watch it. It's incredible. It's very inspiring, and it's going to take me back to our roots, our hand-building roots. We're going to make this, instead of sculpting it like we've been doing all other mugs in an oil-based clay and molding it and slip casting it, we're making a one-of-a-kind piece, and it's going to be hand-built, just like I did my very first tiki mug back in 2002. I made this at my old art teacher's house because she had a kiln, and it is slab built, which means it's made out of slabs of clay. We roll out basically big sheets of clay, and then I made kind of a column shape, and then I made all the teeth. Yeah, so it's made of flat pieces of clay. So that's what we're going to do. Now, since this is going to be a big thing, the clay is not going to be able to support itself, so we're going to make some forms. I always like to make a 1:1 scale drawing of what I'm doing if I'm going to be making a big sculpture, just so that I can actually see how big this thing is going to be before I, open up a bag of clay. All right, I've got it roughed out to scale. This is kind of our general idea of what I want to do. Now, I'm definitely going to change things once the clay starts flying, but this definitely tells me what size to make my form out of. So I'm going to make my form out of this rigid insulation foam. It should hold up the weight of the clay just fine and give it a lot of support during those initial delicate wet stages of the build. So I'm going to mark out my measurements and start putting this together. Oh, and I think I'm going to attempt to put a handle on the inside of this form because I'm going to have to, once I sculpt it all, I'm going to pull this thing out of there. And I often see the forms get stuck inside of models, so I'm going to try to see if I can put a handle in here to help the removal process. Who knows? Okay, I had to dash off to the hardware store to get some 5-minute epoxy so we can stick this together. Every single time I use 5-minute epoxy, I think of being a little kid in my dad's wood shop. My parents are huge DIY proponents, and they were constantly working on the house, and I always remember stirring epoxy with a nail to glue some assorted house project together. While the epoxy is drying for the main part of the fountain, I'm going to make the 2 side bowls. It's going to be a 3-piece fountain, and the goal is to have water flowing out of the top of the tiki down its face. There's going to be a face on either side, and filling these bowls. These bowls will be sitting on kind of ground level, for squirrels and deer to drink out of, and maybe skunks and foxes, and all animals will be welcome. But yeah, I'll be making these out of foam, just like the form for the main tiki. Okay, so the epoxy is still setting over here. It's been 5 minutes, but I'm going to give it a good 20 minutes. So we're going to start working more on the slumping form for the bowl. I'm going to have a bowl on each side of this fountain. And so I cut the rough shape out, and I want to put a bevel on the edges so that when I slump the slab over this, there's a nice angle and I can release it easily. At least that's the goal. I'm going to try using this crazy Japanese rasp that I love for wood. How's it going to work on foam? I don't know. All right, it works great, but it's very messy. The epoxy is set, and I also want to round off the sharp edges of the tiki form and make sure the bottom is totally level. The goal is to have something that will not hurt the clay when you slump it over the top. Oh, and can't forget the handle. I'm hoping this handle pays off in the end. We'll see. You never know with clay what is going to happen. Alrighty, we've got pond form number 1, pond form number 2, and what Denise has officially named the water bearer. I'm so excited. So the forms are done. I even got the handle inside, which you'll see how that will hopefully work later. And yeah, it's clay time. Now, I'm not going to start clay today. I'm going to save clay for tomorrow. I'm a little freaked out. I have not done any hand building for 6 years, maybe? I don't know. It's been a while. So hopefully it's like riding a bicycle. We'll find out. But, this is going to be great. See you tomorrow. Okay, it is Sunday, and I'm going to be honest, I was up forever last night just thinking about this project and worrying about this project. It has been so long since I've done this. I'm freaked out. It's a new clay. I've never used this clay. I'm suddenly like, do I have enough clay? I don't know. So anyways, last night I realized I probably couldn't roll out on this table, so I put together this other table for rolling slabs out. And the big decision I've got to make is, what do I do first? Do I do the bowls first, or do I do the actual tiki first? Now, I'm always worried that I don't have enough clay. This clay is from Georgie's. So one, I'm worried I don't have enough, and two, I've never used this clay before. So not only am I way out of practice, but I don't know how this clay handles. I don't know how it behaves. So I'm thinking, maybe I do the bowls first, get a feel for the clay, and then if I feel good, I can tackle the main tiki. But then my fear is, what if I don't have enough clay left to do the tiki? It's a dilemma! And Georgie's is closed today and tomorrow, so I can't get more clay. Now, this is a ton of clay, though. This is 100 pounds of clay. I'm using the Timberline sculptural clay from Georgie's, which has a ton of grog in it, grog is clay that's already been fired. So it's been fired to vitrification, and then they bust it all up and make it back into powder and pack it into the wet clay. And that gives it a lot more strength when it's in its wet form. It also helps it with thermal shock. It just makes it a stiffer, stronger clay. But it also is very gritty, like you can feel the grog while you're sculpting with it, which is fine with me because we're making giant stone artifacts. So, you know, grog is good. Anyway, God, decisions. I think we're going to go ahead and I think we should do the bowl first. I think it's smart. I don't want to roll this stuff out and, you know, just run into a disaster. So we got to do a test. So the bowls will be the test. But let's look at our tools really quick. First up, we have my slab rolling station. Now, serious hand builders have a tool called the slab roller. It looks like a big printing press, and you can put a block of clay into one side and crank it through, and it comes out in this beautiful, pristine sheet on the other end. I don't have that, so we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. I put this low clay table so I can be kind of upright like this and, you know, won't kill my back. My normal working tables are just a bit too high for this. Also, my lights would get in the way, so that's why I made this low one. It has these railings, which are, I believe, 5/8 inches tall. And then I've got this giant rolling pin. So these 5/8 inch strips will keep the clay at a constant thickness. I know I originally was planning on doing a 1/2 inch thick, but it just looked a little too thin. I want these things to be really strong. So the plan is put a big block of clay here, roll it out, we're good to go. That's tool number one. And this is the other odd tool that we're going to be using today. It is a texture stamp. A texture stamp is exactly what it sounds like. It's a rubber stamp that lets you put a repeatable texture. It doesn't have to be like a perfect pattern texture, but it just lets you apply texture quickly to large areas. Now, this texture is super cool because it has a little bit of, you know, a soft spot in my heart. It's my driveway in Hawaii. We had this asphalt driveway. I thought it had a super cool old stone looking texture. So one day I went out, and this is the critical part if you're going to do this at home. I put a release agent onto the driveway. I used Vaseline. I just put a bunch of Vaseline down on it. Then I took some silicone caulk like you get at Home Depot, squirted out a little square onto the driveway. I put a bucket over it so that no one would step on it for the next 24 hours while it cures. And the next day, I peeled off my perfect little driveway stamp. And then I use this when I do slab building to impart a cool rocky texture onto the clay. They work really well. Can't recommend these enough. I've had this thing for, I don't know, like 10 years or something like that. Long time. They're great. So those are the two kind of unique tools we're going to be using today for slab construction. Okay, I think I'm going to go for it. Super freaked out. This is, yeah, I'm freaked out. But it's going to be okay. It's just clay. It's just clay. All right, let's do it. So here you can see the basic process of rolling out a slab of clay. I am taking the 25-pound block of clay, and I'm going to actually trim it down. I'm only squishing out half of the block right here. I think half a block will be enough for me to cover the slumping form of the bowl. Here I'm double checking the size. Looks good. Yeah. A quick note about wedging. So a big concern with clay is air bubbles in the clay. When you fire it, they can expand and blow your clay piece up. I never wedge. When I was doing hand building for years, I never wedged. I got all my clay from Laguna at the time, and when they extrude their bags of clay, they de-air them so there's no air bubbles in them. This is my first time using Georgie's. Hopefully Georgie's uses the same policies, or this might all explode in the kiln. So it'll be an adventure. Okay, so I've got my slab now, and I'm going to use a texture stamp. I'm doing the texture stamp on the side that's going to be the inside of the bowl, and I'm stamping it now before I slump it over the form, because once it's on the form, I can't get to the inside of the bowl anymore. So we get as much rock texture on there as we can with this tool that I love so much. This is kind of the tricky bit. I've never really made pizza from scratch, but I like to think this is what a 20-pound pizza would feel like. You don't make absolutely sure that your slab is big enough for the form, and you just slump it over there. That's why they call it the slumping form. And I just want to push it down and get the contour as well as I can, being careful not to squish the clay thinner than my 5/8 inch goal thickness for this bowl. So this clay is sticky, and at this point I realized I didn't cover the mold form with like saran wrap, like a cling film, just to help get this to pop off of the form. So you know, it's like riding a bicycle. It slowly comes back to you. I don't know. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You can tell I'm a little stressed at this point, but I'm using the texture stamp, and that always cheers me up. Getting to turn clay into stone, it's always fun. This time we're remembering. So the goal with this saran wrap is if the clay is going to stick to something, you want it to stick to the saran wrap, which definitely will not stick to the foam underneath it. So when we have to take the clay off of the form, it'll just stick to that saran wrap and just come right off. That's the plan at any rate. Yeah, let's all cross our fingers, okay? I'm going to try to put a little bit of a ledge on this one, a bit of a bird landing pad, if you will. Okay, the bowls are mostly done. We've gotten this far. Once these have firmed up a bit, I'm thinking an hour or so, I can pull out the forms, flip them over, and detail the inside section. I've already kind of did a rough texture stamping of the inside, but I'll probably have to go back in and do a little bit more and get the underside of the rims a little better. But overall, so far so good. This clay is super plastic, a lot more flexible than the red sculpture body that I'm used to working with from Laguna. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just different. So I'm freaked out about tackling the the big tiki, of course, but it is just clay. I can always buy more on Tuesday if it's a disaster. And you know, you learn when you have disasters. Anyway, if you think that I might be procrastinating right now, you're right. I am just scared, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. Let's go do it. So I've got 75 pounds of clay. Each bag is 25 pounds. I then cut the bag in half. So I guess I'm doing what's half of 25? Man, I am an artist, not a mathematician. At any rate, I am doing 12.5 pounds per slab, and I'm going to get a total of 6 slabs out of this whole mess. It's a lot, and I definitely could feel it in my shoulders the next day. All right, this is the last bag of clay, which I'm about to smush into a slab, and the bowls over there, which have been sitting for an hour, are still super soft. They haven't really dried much at all. So clearly I have lost all sense of timeliness when it comes to hand building ceramics. I am really been warped by how quickly slipcast ceramics dries around here. So it's going to be a bit of a time crunch. It's already 12:30. I'm going to roll out the rest of these slabs and set them aside. I'm going to go photograph the new mug, the Volcanic Vapors mug, so I can get that sale announcement. And then I'll check back this afternoon to see if I can pop open the bowls and work on them. But I have this feeling I'm going to have to let all these big slabs sit out, and we won't be able to assemble the tiki until tomorrow afternoon. Yeah. Oh. Timing. I really, really wish I had a slab roller right now. Well, this is disturbing. So that's an air bubble that was in the clay. I haven't seen any others. This is the last slab I've rolled out. Hopefully there aren't any more. Okay, here we are, an hour of slab rolling later, and we have got 75 pounds of slabs rolled out. This last one was dodgy. It was the one with the air bubbles, so I'm going to really save this one for last. This is kind of my emergency spare if I need it. Otherwise, I'm going to try not to use it. Now, over here, the bowl sections are looking great. They're still really soft, though, so I'm going to go into the house and take photos of the newest mug. That's going to take me a couple hours. I'll come back, check on these. I think that the slabs are going to have to sit until tomorrow afternoon. So I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get this done in time for Tuesday. Maybe it's gonna be a two-parter. Maybe it's gonna be a three-parter. I don't know. We'll find out. All right, it's been an hour and things are still crazy soft. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna let these sit for another hour, and maybe, just maybe, they will be firm enough for me to take them off of the forms. The slabs, I think I'm gonna put under plastic, and we're gonna just tackle those tomorrow morning. I'm gonna do the sculpting on those tomorrow morning. That's the plan. Okay, it's been another hour, and we're just gonna get in there. We're just gonna do it. I have brought the big guns out. I'm gonna hit this with the heat gun. Back in the day, I used to use a blowtorch. I'm not getting that crazy today, but I'm gonna heat gun this a little bit to try to firm things up, and then we're popping it off. We're gonna start with this one because it has the saran wrap on it, and then we'll tackle the next one. All right, so some good has come out of today. Definitely have some tooling marks here from when I pried it off the table. Got to get rid of those. Moving on to the larger bowl, I once again heat gunned it for a good 5 minutes before attempting to pry it from the form. This is the fun part. Flip. Now we forgot the saran wrap on this one, so we don't know. Ooh. Ooh. Hey! All right. Okay, so with big pieces like this, you want to dry them as slowly as possible. I want that moisture to make its way out of this clay evenly. I don't want the rim to dry before the bottom, or else the rim will shrink and crack and we'll get splits. So I'm going to cover these actually with plastic loosely and let them dry overnight very minimally. And then tomorrow I will lift them off of this surface and put them on to this surface, which will let some air get to the bottoms of the mugs, and that will help them dry evenly. It's Monday, and things have not dried much at all. So this is what's going to happen. We're going to make this a multi-part Tiki Technical Tuesday project, and we're going to return maybe next week to see how this whole thing wraps up. I'm going to rush to the editing booth and see if I can cut this together and get it ready in time for tomorrow. Fingers crossed. These will continue to dry, and I think maybe I can put the slabs onto the form tomorrow. Who knows? You'll have to tune in next week to find out. Until then, this has been a little stressful, but also been a lot of fun. Hopefully it all works out. See you next week.